Look at this small digital recorder. It sits in a clear evidence bag, its surface scratched, rimmed with dried clay. It's the only artifact that preserved the last seconds of Ellie's life. When the investigator pressed play, in the quiet office, ripples spread across a glass of water. A deep, bone-chilling hum poured from the speakers. On the computer screen, a dense, heavy audio wave crawled forward. Suddenly, it spiked, a breath. Then 3 barely audible whispered words stamped on the waveform. "It's not geological." This recording is the final link in a chain of events that began a week before her disappearance. Here's her desk as it was found. A tablet glowing with a complex 3D cave model built from laser scans, accuracy to the centimeter. Beside it, a yellowed paper map from 1934, old, fragile, with faded markings. On it, Ellie had circled a single spot in red, the Hall of 1,000 Echoes. The name Ellie Vance, or just Ellie, was legend in the National Park Service, a synonym for reliability in the global caving community. Not a media figure or thrill seeker, but the bedrock on which modern cave cartography stood, 54 years old, 30 years in service. She authored the digital model of Mammoth Cave, now studied in universities. For young rangers, she was a walking archive, a person who knew every twist and every pit at 5 kilometers depth. She did not flaunt her expertise. She spoke little, and every word had weight. If Ellie said a corridor was stable, you could take a group in, no ropes. If she marked collapse risk on a map, that sector was closed immediately, no questions asked. Her word was law, carved in limestone. Ellie lived alone on the edge of town, closer to wooded hills. Neighbors said her lights were seldom on, and she herself appeared only briefly, to drop off printouts, hand in memory cards, pick up gear. Service for her was not a metaphor. Since her partner and mentor died in a cave-in 10 years ago, she seemed to seal that hatch behind herself. Protocol became her religion. She had one well-known habit, 2 journals, all official telemetry, 3D scans, on a secure tablet. But the real secrets, subtle observations, and what the instruments couldn't read. A draft where there shouldn't be one, a strange resonance underfoot. She recorded in a waterproof paper notebook, a dense pad in a rubber cover, always in her inner pocket. Those notes once saved a missing tourist group. Since then, everyone respected her analog methods. Her tablet entry for October 6, 2015, looked routine. Scheduled calibration in a familiar sector. 8:13, humidity 98%. 9:02, acoustic test in the Hall of 1,000 Echoes. It was a standard check, a huge karst chamber, perfect resonator. But this time, something was off. She felt it approaching. Airflow had changed. She entered the hall, triggered the test signal, and heard almost nothing. Sound vanished into the far wall, never came back. It drowned in stone. She repeated the test 3 times. Same result. The echo, the hall's namesake, was gone. Cold professional anxiety made her grab her laser meter. 12:47. Echo absent. Hall has shifted. Check with old map. Deviation at far wall, 15 to 20 meters. A cave hall can't move. But her tools said it had. That last line puzzled everyone who read the log after her disappearance. Her chief suspected meter errors from humidity. Young cavers joked about burnout. But Ellie, as always, didn't argue. She nodded and went to the archives. Not digital, but paper, where expedition reports from the early 20th century were stored. She dug out a dusty folder. Alistair Finch, Expedition 1934, never returned home. There, she found the old yellowed map, hand-drawn in ink and scarred by age, old names, vanished pits, collapsed tunnels. She unfolded it and immediately found what she sought, the Hall of 1,000 Echoes, with a trembling note by Finch. On Finch's map,
The route to the hall wasn't a straight line, like on modern 3D models, but a sweeping arc, skirting a section of wall, as though the old researcher instinctively avoided something, and where, by Ellie's measure, the shifted wall now stood, there was a short, unnerving note: "Passage unstable." That phrase, written 80 years ago, perfectly described what she faced. Not a sensor glitch, but a documented anomaly. Ellie returned to her computer. She overlaid the old scan onto her digital model. The mismatch was obvious. The modern route ran straight through where Finch's line made a curve. She marked the spot. Target point here. That's where she was headed. A day before her final descent, she made one call. To David, her late partner's son. They hadn't spoken in years. He blamed her for the risk that cost his father's life. So the call felt unexpected, even strange. Ellie didn't ask about him. Her voice was flat, as if she were reading a safety briefing. "David, listen carefully. If anything happens to me, tell the service to check the old borehole B-17 behind the ridge. They'll know what it means. Just say B-17. David tried to ask, to find out what was wrong, but Ellie had already hung up. He didn't think much of it at first, writing it off as one of her usual quirks. He had no idea it was not just a call, but a planted clue, a move in a game only she knew the rules to. October 12, 2015. Ellie set out alone for a routine calibration. No partner, bending protocol, but for Ellie, the rules always stretched. Her routes were always flawless. A staff ranger who crossed her at the entrance said Ellie looked collected, but tense. She was dressed warmer than usual, and her pack carried extra battery packs, 2 flashlights beyond the standard kit, as if ready for a long, solitary mission. Her geolocator, now mandatory, activated at 7:12. The signal was strong, steady. The last ping came at 12:47. It was accompanied by a handwritten note on her tablet, entering anomaly. After this, nothing. The radio, silent. Complete, absolute silence from deep underground. When Ellie's geolocator stopped transmitting, it wasn't the typical signal drop. In cave work, transmission fails when you move behind thick stone, then returns. Systems mark these gaps, log satellite loss. But at 12:47, something different happened. The signal didn't fade. It vanished. Instantly. No error message, no recovery attempts, no record of a return path. It simply ceased to exist. For search coordinators, it was the first true puzzle, as if the device wasn't broken or destroyed, but erased from reality itself. The tech specialist later wrote in his report, "Nature of signal loss does not match any known equipment failure. This is not technical, but physical anomaly." A full search was launched the next day. The first teams, people who'd known Ellie for decades, went toward the Hall of 1,000 Echoes. They braced for anything, collapse, injury, gear malfunction, but they weren't prepared for what they saw, or rather, what they didn't see. The hall was in its regular stable shape, the far wall in place, no new passage, and the most chilling part, no sign of Ellie. Not a single boot scrape in the damp clay, no loose thread from her suit, not even scuffed stone where a caver always leaves a mark. The team leader later said, "I've been in caves for 30 years. I've never felt like this before. It seemed clean, but too clean, like everything had been wiped ahead of time." The geolocator data confirmed she was here, but the physical world screamed she'd never been. On the 9th day, after the search had officially reached a dead end, David, her late partner's son, pressed for his statement about the phone call to be logged. David insisted they check borehole B-17. It was an old exploratory shaft from the 1950s, sealed with concrete, long forgotten, kilometers away from the cave's main entrance. No one thought it could be relevant, but the shaft was slowly opened. When the camera went down, 200 meters deep, in absolute dryness and isolation, they found a body. It was Ellie Vance. She lay on her back, arms at her sides, gear fastened, her face calm. No sign of terror, just peace.
There were no injuries to fit a fall from such height. She couldn't have fallen there. She wasn't able to reach it from the mapped cave system. She was in a place that shouldn't have been possible. Her backpack lay nearby. Water, medical kit, thermal blanket, spare lamp, 2 maps. The modern tablet was switched off, but above it, in the main compartment, lay the same paper map by Alistair Finch. 1934. Spread to the sector of the Hall of 1,000 Echoes. The red circle marking the anomalous zone was there. Beside it, in Ellie's hand, "Not here." Forensic examiners noted her personal paper notebook, 5 pages carefully torn out, dating exactly to the days Ellie discovered the anomaly. No scraps, no trace of those pages. Someone, most likely Ellie herself, had intentionally destroyed those records before her last descent. In the remaining notebook, among notes about air composition and humidity, they found a small sketch. Simple spiral ending in a single dot. No caption, no explanation. Ignored at first. But later, when an archivist scrutinized Finch's 1934 map, he found the same tiny symbol, faded but unmistakable, at the center of that curved path Ellie had circled. It wasn't an official cartographer's mark. It was a personal sign used by 2 people 80 years apart to mark the same anomalous place.
That symbol, scratched with something sharp, was later found on the concrete wall deep inside Borehole B17 beside where Ellie's body was discovered. 2 weeks after, the county sheriff gave a formal statement. Ranger Ellie Vance, respected veteran, died by accident, likely disoriented in unmapped passages, and failed to return. No violence, no foul play. The idea Ellie could be lost in a cave she knew better than her own home seemed absurd to her peers. But official logic demanded tidy conclusions. They didn't reference the geolocator anomaly, the missing notebook pages, the moved chamber, David's phone call, the strange symbol. When the case closed, a junior staff member, sorting Ellie's effects, found a line in her unburned notebook that investigators had missed, written lightly, without date. Today saw them again, shapes at the edge of the light. When you point the lamp, they blend into the stone. No details, no follow-up mention. Earlier, basic weather notes, then this phrase, bursting in from another mental register. A psychologist would call it stress, but an old colleague remarked, "She didn't write dreams, she wrote what she saw." If Ellie noticed something, it was there. Even after the search ended, the anomalies persisted. During a later expedition, in the Hall of 1,000 Echoes, the rescue team's digital compasses and magnetometers all failed at once. Then it began. Compasses spun wildly. Instruments errored out. The effect stretched 50 meters from the far wall of the chamber. Beyond that zone, everything returned to normal. 2 days later, a technical team arrived. The anomaly had vanished, but something stranger had taken its place. The bats, whose colony routes had been stable for decades, had totally abandoned the sector near the Hall of 1,000 Echoes. They avoided it now, as if an invisible wall had risen there. The entire area became a dead zone. Thanks to David's persistence and his official information request, archival documents on Borehole B17 were recovered. It revealed that in 1954, a military project, Resonance, was undertaken there. The stated purpose: deep resonance mapping for early seismic detection. Classified and abruptly abandoned. Official reason: structural instability. But in the declassified technical appendix, never intended for publication, a chilling note appeared. Zone unstable by all measurable parameters. Anomalous signal distortions and non-consistent substrate density detected. Repeat exploration not advised. 2 facts became clear. First, authorities knew about the area's anomaly 60 years ago. Second, Ellie most likely knew and walked straight toward it. When case files already sat in archive, a lab technician recalled one detail. In Ellie's backpack, a dead digital recorder used for voice notes. It was sent for data recovery. After replacing the battery, one file surfaced, 6 seconds long. It began with a deep hum.
the sound of stone plates grinding. 3 seconds in, a sharp breath, then the whisper, her voice cracked by closeness to the mic. Structure. It's not geological. Not just a stray phrase. A verdict. The precise conclusion of a professional facing the impossible. Her last full notebook entry, written the night before she vanished, was different. Not an observation, an instruction for whomever found the journal. If the passage isn't stable, then it isn't empty. We'll check personally. If I don't return, the mark is on the old map. Reserve path through southeast. Do not use, there is no exit. The southeast exit, on standard maps, led toward the hills, where Borehole B-17 was. Her tone suggested that leaving the anomaly depended neither on skill nor on her will. It was the final line written by a woman about to step into darkness, never to come back.
Half a year after the case closed, a group of geology students did a photo survey in the Hall of 1,000 Echoes. Making a panoramic shot of the far wall, one of them saw, on his camera's display, a strange pattern in the limestone, invisible to the naked eye. A design formed by calcite veining. When enlarged, it was a smooth, nearly perfect spiral ending in a dark central point. On hundreds of earlier photos of the hall, no trace of that pattern existed. It appeared precisely where Ellie Vance entered her anomaly. So what was it? Was she a casualty of a lost classified experiment? Or did she chart a place that exists beyond our geology and beyond reality itself? This is not just a tragedy. It's a message carried in the stone, written by data, shadows, and the silence bats now fear. It's the story of one woman whose courage and curiosity crossed the boundaries between worlds. Whatever happened out there, one thing is certain. The echo she heard still waits for an answer. Thank you for watching. Stay alert. Stay humble. Because behind every spiral in the stone, there may be a secret waiting for someone bold enough to listen in the dark.